America has witnessed countless strange events throughout its history, but few mysteries have fascinated people more than the unbelievable disappearance of an entire community in the harsh wilderness during the 19th century. This is a story inspired by real historical mysteries that continue to puzzle historians, investigators, and ordinary people, even today. It begins in the early 1800s, when a group of settlers decided to leave behind civilization in search of a better future. They traveled hundreds of miles across forests, rivers, and mountains until they found what seemed like the perfect place to build a peaceful village.
Land was fertile. The nearby river provided fresh water, and the forest offered endless supplies of wood and wildlife. The settlers worked together every day, building cabins, planting crops, raising livestock, and creating a close-knit community where everyone depended on one another. Life was difficult, but they believed they had finally found a place they could call home. During the first few years, everything appeared normal. Travelers passing through the area reported seeing happy families, healthy farms, and children playing outside. However, strange rumors slowly began to spread. Hunters claimed they heard unexplained voices echoing through the woods late at night. Some described mysterious lights moving silently between the trees.
Others reported finding strange symbols carved into large rocks, symbols that none of the settlers admitted creating. Most people dismissed these stories as superstition, believing that isolation and exhaustion had caused travelers to imagine things that were never really there. But then, something happened that changed everything. One autumn morning, a group of traders arrived at the village, expecting to exchange supplies. Instead, they found complete silence. Every cabin stood exactly where it should have been. Doors were left open. Tables were set with unfinished meals. Clothing, furniture, tools, and personal belongings remained untouched, yet not a single person could be found. There were no signs of violence, no bodies, no blood, and no evidence of a struggle. Livestock wandered freely through empty fields as if their owners had vanished only moments before. Search parties immediately began combing the surrounding forests. They followed footprints that suddenly disappeared, discovered abandoned campsites containing cold ashes, and even found personal items scattered along nearby trails. Yet none of these clues explained what had happened.
Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Soldiers joined the search alongside experienced trackers, but every investigation ended the same way, with more questions than answers. Newspapers across the country published sensational headlines describing the mystery. Some believed the settlers had been attacked by hostile forces, while others suggested disease, starvation, or natural disasters had forced them to flee. None of these theories fit the evidence left behind. If the villagers had planned to leave, why had they abandoned food, valuables, and essential supplies? If they had been attacked, why was there almost no physical evidence? As years passed, stranger stories emerged. Explorers claimed to have discovered abandoned cabins deep in the wilderness, containing objects that clearly belonged to the missing settlers. Others reported seeing unidentified figures watching from distant hills before disappearing into the trees. Indigenous elders shared legends about forbidden places in the forest, where people could simply vanish without a trace. Skeptics argued these tales were folklore, while believers insisted they contained hidden truths ignored by modern investigators. Decades later, archaeologists returned to the site using advanced equipment.
They uncovered foundations of the original buildings, broken household items, children's toys, farming tools, and pieces of pottery, exactly where historical records suggested the village once stood. Scientific analysis confirmed that the settlement had existed exactly as described, but the greatest mystery remained unanswered. There was still no convincing explanation for why every resident disappeared. Historians proposed that severe weather, famine, conflict, or migration could explain parts of the story, yet each theory left significant gaps. Even today, documentaries, books, podcasts, and researchers continue investigating the mystery. Some believe undiscovered documents hidden in forgotten archives may one day reveal the truth.
Others think the answer has already been lost forever beneath centuries of changing landscapes and fading memories. Whether the disappearance resulted from human decisions, natural disasters, or something far stranger, it remains one of America's most captivating unsolved mysteries. The abandoned village reminds us that history is filled with stories that challenge logic and resist simple explanations. Every generation searches for answers, hoping that one overlooked clue will finally solve the puzzle. Until that day arrives, the mystery continues to inspire curiosity, debate, and imagination, proving that sometimes the greatest stories are not the ones with clear endings, but the ones that leave us wondering what truly happened after everyone simply disappeared without a trace.
For more than a century, explorers, historians, journalists, and investigators returned to the Forgotten Valley, each believing they would be the one to solve America's most baffling mystery. Every expedition uncovered new clues, yet each discovery only deepened the puzzle. Old journals described strange sounds echoing through the forest after sunset. Experienced hunters claimed that compasses behaved unpredictably near the abandoned village, while surveyors reported unexplained magnetic disturbances that caused their instruments to fail. Local families refused to enter the valley after dark, insisting they had seen glowing figures moving silently between the trees, disappearing whenever anyone tried to approach them. Although scientists dismissed these stories as legends born from fear and imagination, the rumors refused to die.
In 1912, a young historian named Thomas Walker became obsessed with uncovering the truth. Unlike previous investigators, he decided not to focus only on the abandoned homes. Instead, he studied old maps, interviewed descendants of nearby settlers, and carefully compared every surviving document from the period. One elderly woman handed him a weathered diary that had belonged to her grandfather, a trader who had visited the village only weeks before everyone vanished. The final pages described an unusual atmosphere hanging over the settlement. The villagers appeared frightened, speaking quietly among themselves whenever strangers approached. They claimed someone had been watching them from the surrounding hills every night, yet no matter how many people searched, they never found footprints or signs of another camp.
Leading into the dense forest, exactly as described in the diary. After several hours of hiking, he discovered the remains of a stone pathway, almost completely hidden beneath moss and fallen leaves. It seemed far older than the settlement itself. The path ended at a massive circle of ancient stones, unlike anything recorded in local history. strange symbols covered their surfaces, worn smooth by centuries of rain and wind. No one knew who had built them, or why they had been placed so deep within the wilderness. While examining the site, Walker noticed an eerie silence. Birds stopped singing. Even the wind seemed to disappear. For several minutes, the forest became completely still.
That night, while camping nearby, Walker awoke to the sound of distant voices. They were faint, almost impossible to understand, as though dozens of people were whispering from somewhere beyond the trees. He grabbed his lantern and followed the sounds, convinced another expedition had arrived. The whispers grew louder, then suddenly stopped. In front of him stood an abandoned cabin that had never appeared on any historical map. Inside, everything was covered with dust, except a wooden table in the center of the room. Resting on the table was a small leather notebook. Its pages contained names, every single resident of the missing village. Next to each name was a date, but instead of ending on the day they disappeared, the entries continued for several weeks afterward, describing daily activities as though the villagers were still alive somewhere no one could reach.
Walker rushed back to town, carrying the notebook, eager to present his discovery. Yet when experts examined it, something impossible happened. The ink on every page had faded completely, leaving only blank paper behind. Walker insisted the writing had been there only hours earlier, but no one believed him. Many accused him of inventing the story to gain fame. Disappointed but determined, he returned to the valley the following spring. This time, however, the stone circle was gone. The clearing where it had stood appeared untouched, as if it had never existed.
Over the decades, others reported similar experiences. Some hikers claimed they briefly saw an old village standing exactly where the ruins should have been, complete with smoke rising from chimneys and children laughing outside wooden cabins. Yet when they walked closer, everything vanished, leaving only empty fields and crumbling foundations. Others found antique coins, handmade tools, and family heirlooms that disappeared from their backpacks before they reached home. Every witness described the same overwhelming feeling that someone unseen was quietly watching them from the edge of the forest.
Researchers eventually brought drones, satellite imaging, and advanced ground scanning technology to the valley. They expected science to succeed where folklore had failed. Instead, they encountered more unexplained anomalies. Several drone flights ended abruptly after losing all communication above the same section of forest. Ground-penetrating radar revealed unusual underground structures, but excavation teams could never locate them physically. Every new survey produced slightly different maps, as though the landscape itself refused to remain the same. Today, the abandoned settlement remains one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries.
The settlers fled to escape an unknown danger. Others suspect a natural disaster erased every trace of their journey. And a few still wonder whether the old legends were true, that somewhere beyond the trees lies a place where time moves differently, where those who entered never truly disappeared, but simply stepped beyond the world everyone else knows. Until undeniable evidence is found, the mystery lives on, reminding us that history still holds secrets waiting patiently in silence, hidden among forgotten forests,
abandoned paths, and stories that refuse to be forgotten.